growing up, I was into all kinds of things. I like to make little, movies with my friends. I used to draw a lot. I was always just making things, sculpture, anything really. I'm taking a liberty. I'm not asking for consent when I'm taking a candid shot, but at the end of the day, my intentions are good, and I'm trying to do something that I think people, if they knew those intentions and they knew what work I was trying to produce, they'd agree to it and they'd say, okay, that's okay.
Hey, what's up, man?
How's it going?
I'm good. Nice to see you, man.
Nice
Finally.
to see you.
So, hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Urban Story. I have Sean with me here. Alpen told me about Sean, and I just talked with him for a couple of times, and today is the first time I met him. So, it's a pleasure to have him on the episode. And today we're gonna walk with him around doing some street photography. We're gonna look into how he captured the photos, what is his story, and then what inspired him to do a photo. So yeah, Sean, can you introduce a little bit about yourself?
For sure, yeah, I'm Sean. I shoot a lot of street photography in Toronto's downtown core, a lot in the Queen West, Chinatown, Kensington Market neighborhoods. We're here at Grange Park today, one of the several beautiful parks that we have in the downtown core. So I think we'll do a little loop around the park, and then we'll head down to Queen West, and hopefully we can get some good photos today.
That's good, man. So can you walk us through a little bit about the gear you're using today?
Yeah, so today I'm shooting with a Nikon Z6II. I've got a 26mm 2.8 lens on there. So shooting pretty wide. I'm probably gonna be moving around and using my feet a lot today. So this is my regular setup.
That's good to know, man. So yeah, let's start and see how we captured today. And it's a good sunny day, even we have a little bit cloud, but let's see what we capture.
Sounds great.
Let's go. Yeah, man, so can you walk us through a little bit about like how you start photography?
Yeah, I would say photography for me was kind of a pandemic thing that happened. I was living on the East Coast at the time in Halifax, Nova Scotia. Things were kind of locked down. There wasn't a lot to do, so I kind of just got out and tried to appreciate I guess the city in a way that I hadn't normally appreciated it when things were normal. So I went out, did a lot of shooting on my iPhone at the time, started playing with exposure, and I kind of realized that it was becoming somewhat of a creative expression. So yeah, it just kind of took off from there. I moved back to Toronto about 4 years ago. I landed in the Queen West neighborhood, and yeah, just started picking up from there. And I've been shooting pretty regularly now for about 2 years, I would say. Mm-hmm. But that's pretty much how it started.
So when is the time that you see, like this is gonna be the passion that you're gonna follow? So when is actually kick it in?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, for me, it's really about expression. Photography is a means for me to express myself. And that expression doesn't have to come through photography. For me, it used to be music. I was into music for a long time. Mm-hmm. Growing up, I was into all kinds of things. I like to make little, movies with my friends. I used to draw a lot. I was always just making things, sculpture, anything really. So photography has just kind of taken over as that form of creative expression. And I don't really see it going away anytime soon, so mm-hmm. I'm just gonna stick with it.
So what you normally looking for when you do in street photography, like mostly a story, or it's more about framing that you want to tell?
I would say I'm usually looking for a subject. So I'm looking for people generally first, and I'm looking for light. I'm basically just looking for people in motion, finding a subject that I want to capture, grabbing focus, and then I worry about framing sort of secondary to that. Mm-hmm. Generally, if I don't have good light, I don't really shoot a lot. So I'm really stoked that we have light today.
Okay.
But yeah, a lot of my photography, pretty high contrast, a lot of shadow in my photography. So I really like to use light to accentuate the forms of my subject and create almost kind of like a subframe using shadow.
Yeah, when you shoot, you normally use autofocus or manual?
So I use autofocus. I pretty much stick to center point focus, and I use back button focus on this. So that really helps with my approach where I'm looking for that subject. I'm basically putting the center point on the subject, grab focus with the back button, and then I can sort of reframe from there. So that's typically how I approach it.
Are there any creator or artist that you find that inspiration to you when you start this journey?
I think a lot of the inspiration I draw is from people I know. I think there's something different about looking at someone you know and seeing them produce art that, I don't know, it just kind of gives me the sense that I could be doing something similar. It's almost like a sense of permission, I suppose, I get from seeing people making great things and just being like, I should get out there and try and make something great too. I don't really get that with looking at, a very seasoned, professional street photographer with a large body of work. It's great to look at and take lessons from that as well, but the inspiration that actually makes me want to leave my apartment and go take photographs, that's all from people I know.
When you're doing street photography, have you ever got into any confrontation from a stranger?
Yeah, I think, to be honest, it happens more often than I would like, but nothing too serious, nothing that can't be diffused fairly quickly. So, I think I still have work to do and maybe getting a little bit better at that, but yeah, there's definitely people that, don't want to have their photo taken, and I'm totally cool with that, and I'm not going to press people on that and, assert that I'm within my legal boundary because it doesn't really matter. I'm not here to ruin people's days. Yeah, the ethics of street photography are, in some ways complex, in other ways I think it's pretty simple. When I was young, when I was a teenager, I used to work at a gas station, or several gas stations, and we would always get subject to small theft and that kind of thing. People would do the old pump and run where they'd pump gas and then take off without paying. And I remember one time this guy came in, he had pumped his gas, and he came in and he explained I'm gonna go get my wallet and then I'll come back and pay. And immediately I'm becoming very vigilant and saying to myself, okay, I'm getting taken advantage of at this point. This guy's trying to basically con me out of this money. And before I could say, okay, you can go get it or whatever, he was already out the door. So he took off on me, and I was like, I just got taken for, $40 or whatever it was to fill up back then. But the guy actually came back about 20 or 30 minutes later, and he paid for the gas. And oddly enough, I kind of think of that situation when I'm thinking about the ethics of street photography. I think in that case, what that guy did was he was doing the right thing, but he didn't ask for my consent. He didn't wait for me to agree that it was okay for him to leave and go get his wallet and come back and pay. And I think it's similar with street photography, where it's I'm taking a liberty. I'm not asking for consent when I'm taking a candid shot, but at the end of the day, my intentions are good, and I'm trying to do something that I think people, if they knew those intentions and they knew what work I was trying to produce, they'd agree to it and they'd say, okay, that's okay. So, there might be some momentary discomfort for a lot of people, which I get. And it was the same for me in that moment where I felt very uncomfortable with what that guy did. But at the end of the day, the result is something that, I stand by and I'm cool with. And again, I'm not trying to ruin anyone's day. I'm not trying to, be exploitative or, make fun of anyone. And, anybody that doesn't want their photo taken, they want me to delete their photo, I'm totally cool with that. I'm not gonna, try and stand on that. But, I think where it's a little bit more difficult for me is if I'm just doing my thing and someone comes out of their way to give me a problem and say you're not allowed to do that. And that's where it gets into more of an ego thing where you gotta just gotta let that go and try and move on.
Yeah, man. So what we just did there, you know, like you just walk back and forth at one scene. So can you walk us through about the thought process on that? Why are you doing that?
Yeah, to be honest, it's just kind of getting into like a little bit of a flow. I think a lot of the times when I'm out shooting, I start pretty slow. Once, you know, I start getting some good light, start to feel inspired, I like to move pretty quickly. And like I said, I'm shooting wide, so I need to try and get close to my subject, but you know, I don't want to be super intrusive, so I like to just kind of keep moving. And when I'm moving like that, I just start to see different things, see different subjects, different colors, and I'm just kind of shooting a lot and just trying to capture a lot of the energy that I'm seeing and you're seeing now in this neighborhood, which there's a lot of energy, a lot of vibrance, and I just, you know, I get into that energy and I move around a lot.
So you walk a scene. So normally, like at one scenes like that, how often you gonna walk? You know, like 5 minute, 10-minute walk around.
Yeah, I think as long as the scene is still giving me something, I'll usually continue to work it. So I don't often like post up in one spot and sort of, you know, think of a composition and let people move in and out. Like I'll definitely do that sometimes, but once I start to feel that, get into that zone, I'll just keep working in that scene, moving around and seeing what presents itself and try and capture as much of it as I can.
You normally keep horizontal or you go for vertical sometimes?
I would say like 90% horizontal. I used to shoot more in portrait. To be honest, part of that is just the style and the approach that I picked up over time. Like, you know, you saw me moving around pretty quick there. It's a little bit harder to frame it in portrait, and it's a little bit about the gear too. I can only flip this out on horizontal orientation. So maybe if I had a different camera, I'd be more inclined to try and get some portrait orientation, but yeah, I always kind of default back to the horizontal. Yeah, so we're coming now to Queen and Spadina, and yeah, this is you know, where I live now. This is my neighborhood, but growing up, I would come down here, and just the vibrance and the energy of this neighborhood just spoke to me so deeply, and I would get so excited about coming down here, and I used to almost fantasize about, you know, what it would be like to be local to this area and to be able to walk out your front door and have all of this at your doorstep. And now I live here, and that is my reality, which is like something I try to appreciate every single day because it's such a great community. And yeah, I'm stoked to be here. But you know, you asked about inspiration, and I think a lot of that is the inspiration. Like just being here takes me back to like when I was a kid and just observing, and like I'm just continuing to do that, but now I have a camera with me.
Can you walk us through a little bit about your go-to setting when you do street photography? What is the aperture you normally go to? How much the shutter speed you're gonna use?
Yeah, so I like to keep my shutter pretty fast because I'm moving around a lot, and I'm not always like completely stationary when I'm taking the shot. So for that reason, I shoot in aperture priority, and I basically try and keep my aperture in a place where the shutter speed is going to be fast enough. So if I'm at, you know, if it's sunny out, I'm at f8, shooting low ISO, then, you know, I know my shutter is going to be fine. And then as I'm shooting into the evening, or if there's some cloud, once I see my shutter speed start to drop to a point where I'm not going to get a sharp image, that's when I start to open up the aperture. So I'm really like, yeah, trying to just focus on the shutter speed and occasionally there might be a situation where I'm feeling like I want to shoot open anyway. So in that case, yeah, I would just make sure my ISO is way down and, you know, sometimes shoot wide open if it's a creative decision. But yeah, generally speaking, just shooting at f8 and trying to keep my shutter speed pretty fast. Crop sensor Canon.
Yep.
With just like the kit zoom lens.
Okay.
Shot with that for maybe 6 months. And then, yeah, a friend of mine who's, you know, formerly a professional photographer convinced me that I had to have a full frame camera. So I had it in my head that if I was going to really take good photographs, I needed a full frame camera. You know, I needed a wide angle lens. I know that that's not true now, but at the time,
we learn,
you know,
we live
yeah,
and learn.
Yeah, exactly. I think I have a tendency to get a little bit caught up with the gear, which I think in hindsight is totally unnecessary. You can take a good photograph with anything. And you know, if you think your camera is really that bad, just make it a project and be like, I'm gonna take a good photo with this really bad camera.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because like you say, you start with the phone camera first, right?
Yeah, I started with an iPhone 6, really. That's when I started playing with exposure and realizing like, okay, there's more than one way to take this photo. So that's what inspired me to, you know, start being a little bit more creative with what I'm shooting. And then from there, jumped into the crop sensor Canon. Yeah, spent a few months with that, and then I've been shooting with this Nikon ever since then. So a couple years.
So now you think it's like gear doesn't matter.
I think, you know, it matters in certain conditions, but I think if you haven't shot with a point to you realize what those conditions are, then it's probably not necessary. Mm-hmm. So, yeah, having, you know, not having a full frame camera, not having, you know, 10 frames per second, like, or not the most advanced autofocus, like none of that's really going to stop you from taking a good street photo. So, you know, I think it's perfectly reasonable to work within those limits until they become like a true hindrance to the next step you want to take. And to be honest, I never really got there when I was shooting with my crop sensor camera. I'm sure I would have like by this point, but yeah, I was just kind of buying into the hype of full frame, which yeah, like I say, not really a necessary step.
So when you first start, what is the most challenging things that you find?
Most challenging, getting close for sure. Just having confidence, just yeah, just kind of identifying as like, you know, what it is exactly that I'm doing out here. So, you know, I think if I don't have like a strong sense of like what I'm trying to capture, and I'm kind of just out here with my camera, and maybe people are watching me and they're thinking like, what is this guy doing? So it's just like a lack of confidence and a lack of intention behind what I'm actually doing. So I think over time, just becoming more comfortable, getting into a groove once I'm out in the street, I start to get that confidence and feel like more of a sense of purpose about what I'm doing. So that was a long time coming. It took me a very long time to develop that. And I'm still kind of, I think that's one of the biggest areas for me to work on, is because a lot of people will identify like good street photography as being, you know, about a connection with the subject. But I don't often connect with my subjects. Occasionally I might ask for a portrait, or if I see somebody as being receptive to the fact that I have a camera, I'll engage with them. But for the most part, I'm doing candid photography. So, you know, I think there is a certain level of confidence and purpose that you have to do that. So yeah, I would love to get more comfortable just like speaking to people, creating situations where they're more receptive to having their photograph taken. I'm very introverted, so I don't have that advantage, and it's something that I need to, you know, build that muscle. You can try and take your time and just look for that one shot, you know, or you can try and shoot a lot and try and maximize your chances, I guess. Yeah, when I started, you know, I tended to just look for that one shot. So I take more the approach of like finding the scene and just try and get like, you know, one shot every time I go out that I like. But, you know, now tend to shoot a lot more, move around a lot more, And yeah, so far that's worked out for me, but I can switch back and forth fairly easily, depending on what the situation calls for. Yeah, like a scene like this, it's pretty, some static elements, so you can kind of, play with it for a little while.
Do you have any rule for yourself when you do, street photography? Example, like, okay, I'm not gonna taking photos of homeless people. I'm not gonna taking photo of, kid or, whatever that the rule that you have.
Not really. I think I don't think there are necessarily rules. I understand where people are coming from when they make that decision to I'm never going to take a picture of a homeless person. It's good in one sense because it tells me that people aren't just defaulting to what's legal and just saying, well, I'm allowed to shoot whatever I want, so there's no rules. But on the other side, when you make sort of like a blanket statement like that, you're not really unpacking much and not really really showcasing why you're making that decision. And I think if you kind of dig a little bit deeper, there might be situations where you can find exceptions to the rule. So like, I live in the Queen West neighborhood and I shoot there very frequently. So 10 years from now, I'm going to have a pretty big body of work documenting that neighborhood. And the reality is that homeless people are part of that neighborhood, and they're people who I interact with on a daily basis. And if I were to exhibit my work 10 years from now and exclude homeless people from that documentation, I don't think that would be really fair either. So I think there's always exceptions to those rules. Same with kids. I think it's kind of unfortunate that people are, I would say, hyper vigilant about having their kids photographed or prescribing that that's something that you shouldn't do. I think it's really about intention. I don't think there's really a lot of harm in that. And I think if you look at photos from like the 60s and 70s, there's so many great photographs of kids that are for people to enjoy and to see the joy in those photos and be taken back to a time where they can remember that playful energy. Like, those are things to be enjoyed and shared. And I think it's unfortunate that we've become so sensitive to that kind of thing. I would kind of challenge people to think a little bit deeper about that and looking for the exceptions and really thinking about why those rules are in place. I fail to see, I guess, the danger in a hobbyist street photographer taking a photograph of a kid blowing bubbles at a street festival in Kensington Market on a Sunday afternoon. I think there's exponentially more danger to kids in like the devices that are in front of their faces for 12 hours a day, So I think, there could be some recalibrating there. And, it's unfortunate that I think it just represents kind of like almost a distrust that we have of each other in society. But, not to get too philosophical about it, but there's exceptions to every rule.
You just do what you feel right.
Yeah, I think so. I think as long as you have good intentions and just be aware that there are going to be consequences. So if your rule is that you can take photographs of whatever you want, well, maybe you just have to tighten it up. If you do want to take a picture of a homeless person, like, why are you doing that? And maybe there's like an extra level of consent that you can search for. And same thing with kids. Maybe it's just you want to look for that extra level of consent, have a little bit more sensitivity around that and the way people are going to react, because it can turn pretty ugly pretty quick if you're not thinking too hard about it. So I think good to have rules, but there's exceptions.
Yeah, man. So where did you learn photography?
Yeah, I think a lot of it is just being out shooting. I would say that's where I became comfortable with photography. However, I will say that I'm someone who does enjoy taking courses and taking like a more academic approach to learning. So once I developed like a keen interest in photography, I did enroll in a couple of online courses, learning about different shooting modes. But I think that took me so far, and once I sort of had an understanding of the basics, I was able to just go out and start shooting and learn through experience. So yeah, I would say probably not necessary to take courses, but I wouldn't advise against it. But I'd really love to hear from someone who has like a degree in photography and to see what their perspective on that would be, because I've studied other things academically, and I believe that was the only way to get to where I am now, was through a more formal education. And I'm sure there are folks with degrees in photography who would feel the same way. Yeah, I think workshops are another great one. I took a couple of workshops with some awesome photographers while I was in Japan, and those were tremendous learning experiences from me. And both of those people were able to blend a mix of theory and getting out and practicing, playing with settings. So I think that's like a huge learning opportunity. One of the most beneficial or practical ways to learn is to get out with somebody who really knows what they're doing and learn directly from them. During COVID and sort of, after that as well, we were kind of just spending a lot of time at home. I was watching a ton of POV street photography videos, and a lot of it was in Tokyo and elsewhere in Japan. And I would just be watching these videos every night and thinking about how amazing it would be to go shoot in that city myself. And then one day it just occurred to me, it's like I should just go and do that. So I happened to be going in that direction for work, and I thought this would be a great chance to go the rest of the way, and spent a couple weeks in Japan. And a lot of that time was spent taking photos and meeting up with photographers there. It was a huge learning experience for me. I think by the time I got back to Toronto, I was really into it. I was feeling it, and a lot more confidence came back from that trip. So,
So the difference is totally, the experience is totally different from here to Tokyo, right? What do you feel about Tokyo is different than Toronto?
Well, I mean, like
in terms of street photography, I know.
In terms of street, I think a lot of folks that I was shooting with were, composing scenes first. And I think part of that is, they want the people they're working with to go home with a really nicely composed photo. So I didn't do a ton of, just kind of darting in and out. It was more composing scenes and being very deliberate with shooting, which it definitely resulted in some nice photos. But yeah, I mean, there's so many different styles coming out of Tokyo. It's great to see how much street photography and different perspectives are coming out of there. So another great place to draw inspiration from.
Did you read any photo book?
What's that?
The photo book.
Yeah, I'm not like, I'm no expert when it comes to photo books.
But have you read any of them?
Yes, so kind of a hack. I guess it's not much of a hack if you have a library card, but Toronto Public Library has a ton of photo books, so I'll just constantly like be putting them on hold and taking them out. They don't have a lot of stuff that's new or lesser known, but if you want to get some of the classics and just kind of start from there, Toronto Public Library is a great resource. And then again, people I know, if people are putting out zines or books, I'm more likely, I think, to support people who I know, or even just smaller photographers or creators that I follow. Once they start putting out stuff, I'm very happy to support that, and I'm happy to spend my money in that way and consume their work, because it's awesome work. And as I mentioned before, like when I know those people and I know how the work's being done, it just finds it like that much more inspiring to get out there myself.
Yeah, man, we have a good walk today, and we take a lot of photos. Even me, I'm filming and taking photos too, because
you
the
got
sun,
some good ones.
Yeah, the sun just came out. We have to take advantage of that. So, yeah, Sean, what is one lesson or message that you want to share to your younger self who just started this journey, or maybe to somebody who really wants to start a journey and they just freshly start?
Yeah, I think something I would tell my younger self is don't wait for permission. If you're a creative person and you have an idea, don't look for other people to validate that idea. Just go out and make your shit. And just keep going, keep making stuff, and something good will happen eventually.
All right, man, that's great. So thank you once more time for being a guest and being here with me to shoot the urban story. And I hope that you guys enjoy this. So where can they find your work on Instagram or maybe another platform?
Yeah, definitely check out my Instagram, deception_Sean. Post a lot of photography work there. If you're in the city, you want to meet up, collaborate, go out and shoot, definitely hit me up. But that's where you find my work. And thank you so much for doing this. Like, I think this is such a great project, and I appreciate you. And this was an awesome time.
Yeah, man, thank you. I appreciate you as well. So guys, thank you for watching us and supporting us. If you're not subscribing to the channel and you find some of these videos is useful or make you more inspired, subscribe. We're gonna have more creators coming along the way. So thank you and have a good day from the City of Love.
Hell yeah.